Welcome, Built Right listeners. If you're interested in hearing an AI founder story in the making from the previous Chief Strategy Officer of Salesforce Innovations, this episode's for you. Katherine von Jan, affectionately known as KVJ, is the founder of Tough Day. And we're going to get into more of what that is in a second. But she's an experienced innovator, thought leader on the future of work using technology, which obviously AI is going to be a big part of that. But she's looking to solve some of our biggest challenges at work today. And before Tough Day, KVJ led Salesforce Innovations as Chief Strategy Officer. She's an advocate for workers, teams, and trust, as well as a recognized leader in technology. And she's been shared by CNBC, Forbes, Fortune, MSNBC, Wall Street Journal, and Wired Magazine, which is awesome. And I'm just so excited for this discussion today. KVJ, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so really excited for this. But today we're going to get into your story of creating an AI startup. And I call it an AI startup, but really that's just like the enabling technology for what I believe is something very human that you have a vision of building. And then we're going to dig into how human connection and relationships with AI is evolving. Plus, you're a strategy person. I'm a strategy person, so I'm sure we'll get into some of the fun strategic stuff around starting a company and what you think about and how that's changing with Gen AI. But first, I want to start with that founder story. And typically, when we have a founder on, they're talking about their journey that already happened. What's so cool about this is you're in the midst of this thing right now. So we're getting it hot off the presses as you're thinking about it. But start with the why behind Tough Day, the vision there of what you're looking to build.
Oh gosh. First, my story goes way back before building Tough Day and even before I started working. So I think I was always destined to work on this issue and I could share more about why and how, but really what we're trying to do is support workers through their difficult challenges, navigating complexity and perplexing situations. We want to help give workers the clarity that they need, the expert guidance and objective guidance that they need to succeed and thrive in the workplace.
And so much of that is evolving today, not to mention we've all a lot of us have moved to remote or some kind of mix of remote. And then, oh, by the way, you inject everything that's happened with Gen AI since 2022. So it's
Mhm.
changing things like dynamically. Plus, just, you know, being an employee nowadays, anyways, is just tough. There's so much stuff to weed through, right?
It's hard. I think, listen, there are societal issues.
Yeah.
There's so much going on for workers today. There's so much frustration and fear and grievance and confusion. I don't know that that's all about the latest sort of exogenous forces and their impact. I think that a lot of that has been creeping up on us for many decades. And
Hmm.
I would say, like, my first experience having that record screeching moment of, hey, wait a minute, what is going on here was way back in high school, actually, when I guess up until that point, I had never felt like I wasn't accepted or capable or a leader in the classroom or amongst my peers valued. And I was leading this is an aside, but like I was leading this Latin club as president. So my friend Julie and I, we got to high school and we just loved Latin. Probably a little dorky, but we did. And we were like, we're going to make Latin cool. And we really did. We poured our hearts and passion into reviving this Latin club. And at some point, we had hundreds of members. And there was a big induction that was about to happen. And we were, inducting all the new members. And my Latin teacher told me that I could not perform the ceremony because I was a girl. And
Oh,
that
you're kidding.
no, and because
Wow.
traditionally Julius Caesar would have done it, and he had he had control and power, and therefore we need to find a man in the group, a young man in high school to lead this ceremony. And I was just like, wait, what? This is crazy. But I was like, I don't know. That's just weird. And I went home and I told my mom, and my mom, as a school teacher and fierce advocate for women, like, was like, oh, hell no, that's not how this works. And there's something called Title IX, and let's go in and talk to the school about it. And sure enough, I got to be Julius Caesar and lead the ceremony and all of that. But I I think even so there are things that people just do, and they think it makes sense to them, and they're in a powerful position to make decisions that unchallenged, that just frustrates people. It could have totally
Mhm.
diminished my educational experience, but I had an advocate. I had someone with knowledge and wisdom to say, hey, let's go have a conversation. Let's try to let's talk this out. And we resolved it. And I had a great relationship with my Latin teacher after that, and it all worked out. But that advocacy and that clarity and that understanding of, hey, this isn't quite right and we can fix it. That's really what we're trying to do for workers every day. Everyone should have a place to go to get that kind of clarity and advocacy. Not that
It's
we're not coming in and helping. We're not going to send in my mom or anyone else into the organization, but the reality is workers just need the information and guidance about what to do, and then they can go back to their organization and have conversations that might be hard for them. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, we need to replicate your mom as an AI to go in the system. It's I always find that interesting when I talk to a leader or founder. There's always those like little kernels from their life that manifest later on and drive this for you because most students probably just would have said okay and just kept that in and not known where to go. Thankfully, you did have your mom you could go to that kind of led you through that, right? But
And
really interesting. Yeah, good.
I would say, like, for most workers, if you flash forward, and there's a lot in between, but if you
Hmm.
flash forward, there are a lot of workers when something happens, to your point, they don't know where to turn. They don't have a family member who knows anything about management or coaching or
Hmm.
HR or employment law. By the way, like, most things are not illegal. Like, a lot of people might think, oh, they're not allowed to do that. Yeah, actually, a lot of things are allowed. You're
Hmm.
just upset about the situation. So let's understand what's really going on and how we can fix it. And if you only have inexperienced and, like, lovely human friends that you can turn to, they're mostly going to support you. That's what humans do for each other in terms of, oh, I'm so sorry that's happening. And yeah, he or she must be horrible. And let me give you a hug and coddle you and talk it out with you. And that kind of perpetuates the problem, where
Mm.
what workers really need is more clarity, more insight, and I would call it tough love, objective advice, in order to solve the problem, not to recreationally vent about it and have that cathartic moment of, like, release. It's more meaningful in that, hey, let's talk about how you can go back and have a great conversation and resolve this situation before it turns into something massively frustrating and brings your coworkers down, distracts you from performance, and all it becomes a mess.
Yeah, it's I think on the manager side too. Like I know I've run into this where I don't always know where to point somebody either, right? And having that kind of neutral third party in a sense, and we'll get into how this is actually the strategy behind how it works in a bit, but there's value in that to where it is somebody that is outside of the nuance of the situation, right?
Yeah, I think just uh, the point about managers, like, managers are employees too, and managers need
Mm,
support too.
yeah.
And often they can't find the information or don't have the source of truth handy, and they can be ill-informed. So this is just as much for managers as it is for employees.
So what was this inflection point for you? You're at Salesforce, this awesome position and role. What's that inflection point where, okay, I'm going to take this kernel of an idea, purpose, and vision that I have and turn it into something. What was that trigger for you? Was it inflection point of things going on in the AI space and now this is possible, or was it just the right time and just organically went from there?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. So one, I'm for better or worse, I've been around long enough in the tech industry. I've seen some things.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is at the beginning of the internet boom, I was at Lotus before we were acquired by IBM, but at the forefront of using the internet
Hmm.
to do business. And then in mobile was out in front, pioneering new mobile solutions when that happened, and then moving into social and peer-to-peer and all these different technological waves. When AI started to enter the scene 10 years ago is when I got really curious about it. Wow, this can really enable so many human experiences, so much wisdom, knowledge sharing, expertise. We can really support people. So even at Salesforce, my team was innovating and incubating internally and externally in this future workspace. So we, as an example, built an AI talent agent, gosh, 2016, 17-ish.
Yeah.
And other things as well, mentorship, and we built something called the warm line. Actually, the concept came out of our team, and then a team took that and ran with that. And the warm line, just as it's for many, they probably don't know what that is, comes from the mental health space that
Mm,
before you're in crisis, when you would need a hotline, you might want to just talk some things through. There can be a warm line that's a safe place to call and get advice. And so we were playing with that idea with respect to culture at Salesforce. Salesforce won an award for that at World Economic Forum this year. Jacqueline Chapman was on the original team. She went off to run it and lead it. There have been all of these things that we were doing to really pioneer the future of work. And yet, like, two things came to me. One was the core business of Salesforce, and I'm happy they're in this business and leading the way there, is CRM or in customer experience. And I came
mhm.
to realize, for me personally, I care about employee experience and employee relationship management and how we're going to enable workers to do the most amazing work that they can to solve our biggest problems. That's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to do the CRM CX thing. So that was just about aligning my personal values and mission with what I need to do in the world. The second thing was then like using this next wave of technology around AI to go advance those things. I left and started playing and putting little teams together and building little prototypes. And what happened in that process was I was getting tons of phone calls last summer from friends across the industry, people I had worked with, people I had mentored, people who mentored me, and people were distressed and
Yeah.
struggling with layoffs, struggling with how is AI going to change things and worried about things. And I found myself enjoying this process of talking people through like how they might think about it. And then I realized, duh, like this should be AI. We should like, it's
That's
not
the
about
thing.
me and my advice. Actually, it's about the wisdom of the best managers on the planet, the best mentors on the planet, the best HR professionals, legal minds, all of that wisdom brought to bear at scale to help workers in a safe way, in a safe place to empower them to go solve their own problems. That was the aha. And then I can tell you about what happened after that.
Yeah, so it's interesting too. You mentioned doing stuff 2016 and before, and a lot of people think this is like this new thing that just exploded on the scene, but it's been around for a while. I think 2017 was that big inflection point where the transformer architecture that really just accelerated this stuff took off, but it's been around for a while. But I think the interesting point, and we chatted previous leading up to this, you mentioned how you were doing several different things, had some teams building POCs, but then this like moment of clarity to create focus, and how important that was in
Yeah.
getting things moving.
Yeah. One of the things that happened as well is a friend turned me on to the book Essentialism. I don't know if you've heard it or if we talked
Yeah,
about it
I've
before,
checked
but
it out since we talked. Yeah.
yeah, it was just so easy. Probably there are other books written about this. It was like there was a moment in this book that basically was about you've got your glass of water. You can pour that into several glasses, or how are you going to spend your energy
Mhm.
on lots of little things or on one big thing? And then I was like, oh, yes, like I have to do the thing that I care about the most, that the world definitely needs. And I knew I had to go explore it. And I knew I had the passion for it. And another friend said something to me like, okay, you were at Salesforce almost 10 years. Is this problem something you want to spend the next 10 years thinking about? And it was like,
Yeah.
hell yes, absolutely. We have to make progress. We've been talking long enough. Like, we have to make progress on this. So,
Yeah. And I think what's cool too is it's the beauty of using this new technology and AI for solving big problems, for doing good things. Because the way I think about it, there's the debate of is it good or bad? And I think it's nuanced. I think it's both, right? There's going to be good actors and there's going to be bad actors. And with this big of a disruption, it just means the scale is going to be that big on both sides of it. So there's a lot of value in people like you actually doing something valuable, important with the technology. But so you're a strategy person. Take me through the beginning days. I love hearing how
yeah.
founders think about things strategically in terms of you've got it nailed in terms of, okay, I have my purpose, I got the problem I want to solve. But what are other pieces? And some of this is probably happening right now in terms of how you're thinking about it strategically, go to market, what customers you're
Yeah.
talking to, how you're refining the early thing that will be the product. Take me through some of that.
Yeah. W- One thing is just, and I think all founders have this, is there's a point when you realize all your experience was leading you here and you didn't know it all
Yeah.
along. And you have some
Yeah.
secrets, some wisdom or experience that is, hey, the world should know this. And I'm not going to write a book. Like, I don't want to write a book. I want
Yeah.
to build something and make an impact. So I think that was part one. Part two, or that was important and necessary. That then the strategic part of how are we going to do it? We need to start somewhere. So I wanted to first validate the idea. I
Mhm.
talked to step I really talked to a lot of friends who knew me very well. I talked to people in the industry, working in tech, people who were CMOs and CROs and CHROs and VCs and lawyers. And I was like circling lightly, like, here's what I'm thinking about. Like, hey, let's catch up, have coffee. I have something boiling here. And they're like, I just want to talk about it. And people were like, oh my gosh, you have to do this. So like
Mhm.
that partly I was motivated, partly that was also like a lot of validation just anecdotally. And then I was like, okay, I'm getting serious now. Like, I'm going to need a team, and I I need to think through this with some folks. So I asked a friend who's an executive at Google if he would sponsor a dinner. I was like, I think we need to
Mm.
bring some legal minds, HR minds, great management minds, coaching minds, business minds together. And I just want to host a dinner and get them talking about a couple of the questions I have. And he said, and it's such a gift, he's like, you can't get anything done in a dinner. What are you talking about? And I was like, I need a way to bring people together. And he was like, how about I fund an offsite? Do you think you could get 8 to 10 people to go spend 5 days in the Caribbean somewhere, and we just lock away and hack this. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. It sounds awesome. Thank you very much. Like, this incredible opportunity. And it turns out both old friends and new ones, people I had met like a month
Mhm.
before, were saying, I love this so much and I believe in you and I want to come down and be part of this offsite. And that's very humbling and special. And it was just this enormous sense of love and appreciation for these people. And we could have walked away from it saying, this is a terrible idea and we should not do this. But with 3 weeks notice, 10 people flew to the Dominican Republic and had 5 days of fun, of sharing, of dinners, of just being together, and one-on-one walks and meditation and yoga and work. And essentially, we hacked the business plan, which I had been ruminating on, and I asked each person to do a mini section on their area of expertise. So as an example,
Mhm.
Jenny Fielding from Everywhere Ventures was there, and she did a session on how to think like a VC. And it was amazing. And not everyone in the room had the same kind of expertise that other people had. So everyone was learning. And then we would do workshops around each piece of expertise. So in that case, we hacked our investor deck.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
strategically, it was not it was like bringing in the right partners, thought
Mhm.
partners to help think through where we go and how we get it done.
I have so many questions about the workshop. That would have been awesome to be a fly on the wall there. But like for to take a step back for all the listeners right now, look what KVJ did, right? She went and talked to customers first, and you always hear this, but so many folks go straight to building the thing. It's such a foundational piece, actually talking to folks, hearing their perspectives, and the right folks, right? The target folks you're going after. But you mentioned you were talking to some friends. How do you avoid like the friend bias when you're pitching them a new idea and they want to tell you, oh, it's awesome, that's great. How do you avoid that? Talking to folks
I
outside of
mean,
your friend group as well, but
I think, first of all, I value candor, and I think all
mhm,
my friends know I'm going to tell them what I really think. And I also
yeah.
know my friends tell me what they really think. Like, I've had ideas where people are like, you're crazy. That's never going to work. So I think just seeking diverse opinions and having diverse friends give you a point of view on what they're thinking. There was no way I could circulate with that, let's say 20, 30 people, and have them come back. In circulating with all those different friends, it could have been that one or two of them might have been placating me or coddling me. Or like, that's sweet, KVJ. But
Yeah,
no, I feel like fortunately, I have friends that will tell me the truth.
those are good friends.
Yeah.
You're starting this startup. I'm curious with folks now, with everything going on with Gen AI, and you have Sam Altman talking about, oh, there's going to be one person, $1 billion companies. Are you approaching anything differently as you're thinking about your team structure, how you're using technology in the building of it that may be different now than how you would have done it, say, 5 years ago? Is there anything different in your approach early on?
I had a startup before Salesforce, so it's an interesting thing to reflect on. I think it was doing things back then that actually now are acceptable and back then were not. As an
Yeah.
example, using uh, contractors all over the world.
Hmm.
It used to be that VCs would say, what, you don't have a core team like sitting together, living and working together. And now that's not a question anymore. In fact, they're like, oh, yeah, like you should just get the best talent wherever they are. And we can't afford to hire people full time, but fortunately, a lot of people are passionate about it and they want to work on it even as contractors. That's one piece. I think AI first mindset. AI is not perfect, but you can think of it as the first pancake in almost anything. Like, what could I do? And it might be messy and it might not work exactly right, but you could probably expedite the process a little bit by thinking about using AI first.
The first pancake, I like that. And I've not heard that analogy. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think like using AI every day, we can get into the research techniques that we're using because I think some of those are really new.
Yeah, I do want to get into that. But just quick aside, you just gave like the perfect pitch for Hatchworks right there. So like a big part of our operations is down in Latin America, and it's so true. There is talent everywhere. What we found interesting is like post-pandemic, people were remote. The real important thing was, can you share the day's work? Can you be in the same time zone? But I just love how that mindset is progressing. It doesn't just have to be somebody co-located in the US. I mean, there's so much good talent everywhere. But yeah, let's get into that. You talked about some of the research techniques and how you're approaching this that may have been different uh, pre everything going on with generative AI.
Yeah. And I should also say, I'm a co-founder. I have an amazing CTO who was at that Dominican Republic offsite and then fell in love with it too and decided to join me on this journey, as well as another one of our colleagues who joined. So there are three of us as a core team, and I would say we're all inventing the research methodologies all the
Mhm.
time, and each of us has our own experience to inform that. I think we've all had some product management, sales, some customer facing roles,
Yeah.
strategy roles, all of those things. So we're all ambidextrous with each one of us having a core, like Alberto is deep tech, right? And I cannot code, at least not anymore. But so I think in terms of interesting tech, interesting research methodologies, first I should say lots of the old methodologies still work. Like our
Oh yeah.
employee need survey has been illuminating, and I could get into that. But so don't overwhelm yourself with designing the biggest kind of research project. Like some of the old tools are still really good. We use those as well. I think the Wizard of Oz testing that we did as a methodology was phenomenally insightful, and just to explain what that is. And I think probably different organizations do this and call it something else. But what we mean
Mhm.
by Wizard of Oz testing is that users come in to engage with AI, but rather than having AI answer the questions, we've got our wizards behind the curtain answering as if they were the AI. We would schedule user testers to come in. We used just a Google Meet, and we said, look, we're going to turn off the video and turn off the voice, and you're only going to be texting with the AI. And we told them it's not really an AI, but we're simulating that experience.
Mhm.
Um, we were actually removing PII and using AI to see what would it say. But we also had a lawyer, a manager, a coach, an HR professional sitting around the table. So when a question would come in, depending on the first 5 lines of the exchange, we would decide who's going to be the protagonist and play the AI and like actually be the one to type. And then the others are all going to discuss and give ideas, like so we could move fast. So one of us was representing the actual AI and saying, this is what Claude Pi, whatever any other AI would say, ChatGPT, we used all of them about this topic. And then we also had just the humans answering. And the exchanges were amazing. I think a couple things that surprised us. One was everyone, 100% of people were very quickly engaged, sharing problems and sharing a lot of multi-dimensional problems. They start simple and then get into a lot of complexity. They seem to do that much faster than you would do it with a human. If we're sitting here talking, there's going to be some time for us to get to know each other, for me to
Yeah.
trust you and you to know I can share things without feeling judged or feeling any shame about what I'm going to say. And I think a lot of that gets removed when a human is talking or chatting with AI. It's just like
Hmm.
very matter of
That's
fact.
interesting.
Yeah. So it was like, and then we thought the sessions would last about 15 minutes. Come in, ask your question or two, and you're out. And 100% of the people went at least 30 minutes.
Wow.
That was astounding. And we actually had to cut people off because we're like, we have another one scheduled. And people were asking if they could schedule another user testing session so they could come back in. And so that was
Because
like
they enjoyed it that much.
very,
Yeah.
very, yeah, they enjoyed it. But even being unprompted, just spontaneously, they would say things in the chat about, this is really helpful. I'm going to try that. There was like 100% of people said that they got value out of this and something that they can go try. So that was also great, great to understand. And then, of course, again, removing all PII from those transcripts, we can use those exchanges to fine tune our model. The real human dialogues really help to train the AI to be curious, to understand. We're training, we know that you can't necessarily give someone the right answer without having context.
Mhm.
Similar to if you went to a lawyer or a coach or manager and you said, I have a problem, they'll probably ask you 3 to 5 questions about what's going on before they give you advice. So the same has got to be true of an AI that's going to support you in these challenges.
Yeah, it's such a smart approach. And the concept of Wizard of Oz testing, it's been around for a while, but there's the new element here, just from hearing you talk about it. You get to see how people are interacting with the simulated AI, which gives you an idea of the experience, how they would interact with it naturally with a human. But the genius part is you're using that to train the AI, to train the LLM versus just saying, okay, we got off the shelf ChatGPT, go have fun.
Exactly.
And that's genius. And,
Oh, I thank you.
it really is, especially because this is all kind of new and emerging. So if you're starting an AI kind of focused company, like such a great approach there for listeners when they're thinking about it. And you mentioned you tried Claude and ChatGPT and some different ones. What was that process like of deciding on an LLM? Did you look at open source options?
Yeah.
What was that like? And I know you're not the technical
The
founder
deep
like you mentioned,
technical one.
but
No, I think that there was, gosh, I'm even thinking back to December, like everything changes so fast. But I
yeah.
remember when we first were playing with Pi, and it just felt so much friendlier and
Yeah.
empathetic. And, and we were just literally asking questions of all the platforms to see like
Hmm.
what resonates with us, what kind of brand experience do we want to have, or user experience do we want to have, and we can learn from how they're delivering that. And then we could also learn where each of them fell short. Obviously, we're not going to build our own LLM.
Hmm.
We are going to fine tune based on the area of expertise where we're focused. And I there are a couple private ones that we're working with now.
Yeah,
So
and
so
that's
we're
the of
not
it.
we're not looking to, hate to say it this way, we're not looking to train ChatGPT or OpenAI's model to do what we're going to do. So
Yeah.
we're building the layer on top.
And you don't need to now. That's the beauty of this shift that's happened. It's truly democratized the ability to use AI. And that was the big blocker because you look at ChatGPT and these models, they literally are spending up to millions, billions of dollars to train the models, and they're running for literally days on end to train it. And now that you have these options out there, the open source options, we're actually doing a webinar today, which when this airs, it'll be in the past, but looking at how to leverage open source models via Hugging Face to just build a simple RAG retrieval augmentation
Yep.
generated chatbot. I'm sure you're familiar with
Yep.
that, but
Sounds familiar.
it's yeah, exactly. And that goes back to the context element, which is so critical. But I think the LLM component will become commoditized in a good way because it'll be available to everybody. And that's where proprietary data, what you're training it on top of it, and then the context element, that's where back to strategy, that's where the differentiation comes in. That's where you can actually build a moat. And I want to shift there just back to the strategy side. I feel like the ability to build a moat just got a lot harder. You're seeing a lot of products out there that are just wrappers on ChatGPT. ChatGPT comes out with new functionality and it wipes
Yeah.
out a whole slew of
Yep.
products. So how do you think about moat building in this new age we're in?
Yeah, I think one part of it is about content, content partnerships, and licensing is hard in this space. Nobody's figured out
Yeah.
that out exactly. It's not like we're Spotify and we can just, there's a model for breaking up the album into songs. There's, in this case, it's like dissecting a book or articles or what have you into
Mhm.
the soup. So it's harder to figure out how to do that. We're thinking strategically about our partners in that space and doing POCs. I'm not sure, I can't really talk about who those partners are
Mhm.
without their permission to do so, and it's a little early for that. But we're really excited about the organizations we're working with leveraging their content because they believe in this idea as well. And we're
Yeah.
figuring out new ways to add value or exchange value with them.
Mhm.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be cash for each time an article is referenced in terms of as a source in something. It's really, there's lots of other ways we can deliver value back to those publishers and authors and experts. So I think that's one part of the moat. I think there are some features that, to your point, probably will become part of the broader LLM space, but I think in the short term, they can help us win. And for this use case, there are things that can help us win with this use case. And once we're in, then if there's another place for that, if we're already the trusted source, then we're the trusted source and it's harder to pull you out. I think go to market is the other piece, is like the
Mhm.
go to market partnerships and our strategy for how we deliver this. Is not, I'll just say this, it's not the usual suspects. It's not the Accentures and the SIs, and a lot of tech companies will, we want to have relationships with those organizations, but we're not relying on them as our go to market. So we're being smart about who makes the most sense in this context to partner with us and be the face of our organization.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think whole new business models are going to emerge from this. You mentioned like just the other day, I believe it was a partnership between Reddit and Google leveraging their data. And it's, oh, here's this whole new revenue stream we have that we've just been building over time. So I think that's going to be a super interesting part in terms of how these business models get defined, how they evolve, because it's not, to your point, it is messy. think you mentioned like the soup metaphor. It's like baking a cake. It's all in the cake. So which piece am I
Yeah,
divvying up?
exactly.
I
Exactly.
want to go back to one point you mentioned earlier, and it gets to the human connection side with AI. And you mentioned how people were interacting with the AI, even if it was simulated, was completely different. And I talked to a friend the other day. They said on their commute, they're using the chat GPT function where you can talk to it, and they just talk to it on their commute. And I'm like, what are you talking to the AI for 30 minutes
Yeah.
at a time? But it is a different interaction. Like, how do you see that evolving over time with that difference of interacting with AI versus, say, another human? Like, what happens there?
I think it's important to recognize what the user in any of the use cases, so like what the
Hmm.
user wants to get out of it. Is it entertainment? Is it comfort?
Yeah.
Is it something actionable? So I think AI can do all of the above. It's just about, what design the experience for what your users really want and expect of
Mm,
you. So in our case, like we're toning down all the kind of cozy coddling things
yeah.
because we're hearing from our users that what they want is the thing that most of their friends and colleagues aren't giving them, which is a kind of a bit of tough love and saying,
Yeah.
hey, you might look at it this other way. And it's funny because I think managers can often give their employees a bit of that. And the employee might think, oh, I'm not really sure what their motivations are.
Mm,
I don't know. I better think about that. I'm not sure if that's right. And you're not going to open a book and read a book on management and figure that out. So there's something in between that is actually, I want to go to a source of truth that can either validate what my manager said, or my manager can go there and say, actually, this is a much better way to answer this question than I would have it. Like I
hmm.
would have. But there seems to be a need for an outside source that is just totally objective and just
Yeah.
can say, this is how I would break down the problem. Does it seem to be illegal, unethical, or just uncomfortable? Guess what? Like 99.9% of the time, it's just something uncomfortable. If you can acknowledge that it's uncomfortable, then we can talk about like, how do you fix that? And it's just, I can also imagine a super friendly, cuddly teddy bear style AI that is really just there to tell you how awesome you are. It just depends
Yeah.
what you want.
Has a different purpose, which may
Yeah.
be that may be a bad thing in the long run. But I like the approach that you're taking, where it is the tough love, the getting to the real meat of the situation. But synthetic humans,
Yeah.
big pivot right here.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
scary, but we talked a little bit about this and another just really genius approach to starting something today. What are synthetic humans? How are you using them?
Yeah. So, based on all the research that we've been doing, we've identified really 10 personas or archetypes. I like the term archetype, but
Mhm.
we've put some persona around the archetypes. We know what the top challenges are that workers are facing most regularly. We also know the one-off use cases or the less common things, but we've trained 10 personas, 10 AI to represent these different challenges or represent workers who have these challenges. And we've also designed them to represent different geographies, different underrepresented groups, just putting more context into who these individual personas are. And so imagine if you had a human come in and interact with the AI. In this case, we've got these AIs trained to represent an individual of a particular
Hmm.
background with a particular lived experience with some particular problems at work that is asking us first, like a whole bunch of questions. So our wizards can answer AI questions and get a lot more questions than what we would get from doing user testing. So it's complementary. We also then moved on to have these personas asking AI directly a bunch of questions,
Wow.
which is, it's gotten really interesting. I would say 50% of the questions that these synthetic workers are asking are brilliant and really insightful, really interesting. And 50% are just like gobbledygook or not that
Yeah.
it just, they're not interesting. They don't help us understand a problem that we want to solve. And so we're consolidating all the best questions from each of these personas back into the themes where we need to become experts. And then we're able to use that to direct what content we need to be able to fine tune the AI to do, to have those conversations. And we've actually really had some breakthrough with that. I'll just give you an example. We had a scenario about micromanagement, and the questions weren't necessarily about micromanagement. They were about behaviors that the AI could
Mm.
tell relate to micromanagement, and then could make recommendations for how to deal with a manager who's a micromanager, and things you might ask about are ways to navigate that situation. And it was just like, wow, this is really cool. Like, it's really working.
I'm getting like chills thinking about this in a good way, not because synthetic humans are a scary thing, but I go back to back in the day, previous roles. We would define personas. They would live in a PowerPoint deck, and it's as far as they
Yes.
went. But you're actually like
Yeah.
giving life to these personas, and not only giving life to them, but you're using them to further train and enhance, in this case, the LLM, which is the underlying machine of what you're building. It's crazy. And so the synthetic human, which is an AI, is interacting with the LLM, the tool that you're using. So you have AI interacting with AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there, was there any just like weird, like off the wall things you saw happen out of that, or?
Sometimes just got really repetitive. Like it
Mm,
got in
yeah,
like these repetition loops
circular
where it's
kind of.
like they're not
Yeah.
even having a conversation. Like, my manager's a micromanager. Oh, it sounds like your manager's a micromanager. Like, that kind of thing would happen. But no, we're really cautious. We've had some outside guidance from AI researchers that have helped us to do this as well. So we're trying to be very ethical about it. And
Yeah.
but in terms of weirdness, like I said, 50% of the questions and things that were coming out of that, we were just, let's scrap it. But the fact that 50% was good, it's not about, oh, now our persona is great. Actually, what we just want to do is get more research.
Mm,
And if this, we have to still evaluate whether or not each exchange with this synthetic persona is worthy to learn from or not. And that's
yeah.
humans doing that.
You have a
I
whole
think
new product idea right there. You could do synthetic humans, which I'm sure there may be companies already doing
I
this,
think
but you're
there's
building.
one, yeah, that I heard of
Yeah,
doing this for market research where they've
that's
simulated,
cool.
um, yeah, to your point about
Yeah.
personas in a PowerPoint. Isn't it interesting though? Take
Yeah.
them out of the PowerPoint and have them interact with you.
Mm, that's crazy. So the last thing I want to hit on, you mentioned earlier being at Lotus, you saw the birth of the internet and all these transitions with mobile and cloud and things going on. Where do you sit where we're at, or where do you put where we're at right now with generative AI? At what scale? Is it at the scale
Oh,
of the internet, more or less? Do you
bigger.
see like dot-com bubble hype? How would you equate it having worked through that experience?
I feel like there's there were a lot of technologies that I thought were hype, like just personally,
Hmm.
like crypto. I know people are huge crypto fans. I'm just like,
Yeah.
not, like, and NFTs and stuff. We all have our opinion,
Yeah.
but this feels this is going to transform our lives in ways that are just really hard to even imagine because
Mhm.
our work is going to change. Our relationships are going to change. I think we're going to have like bots doing all kinds of things for it, like bots negotiating with bots to do a lot
Yeah.
of the work. I think problems will fix themselves. There will be, your car is going to know it needs something and just, I think Tesla already does this, just drive itself to the nearest gas station and get whatever you
Hmm.
need if gas stations still exist. But I think that this is transformative. This is a tidal wave. And I think you've
Yeah.
got people who are sitting on the beach, looking at the weather, thinking it's a sunny day, and they see this wave out in the distance. That's pretty. And then you have some people running for the hills. They're like, oh my gosh, this is scary. And you have some people grabbing their surfboards and going out to check it out. And
Yeah.
those people on the surfboards are the ones who are going to define what this is. And I think that's a wake up call for everybody.
Hmm.
Who do we want doing this work and
Yeah.
how and what solutions? And so I'm hoping that people really lean in. We need to democratize the innovation in this space and include all kinds of people in that really pioneering work that's going to inform how we live.
Yeah. I love the kind of surfing tidal wave analogy. In like at Hatchworks, we're doing exactly that. We do custom software development, but right now we're digging into every aspect of the software development lifecycle from strategy design, development, testing, deployment, all of that. And we're seeing where we can leverage generative AI in that. But there's tools, but then there's this foundational change of how you interact. Like we have architects now that are defining the skeleton of the architecture working with Gen AI. Then you're taking it iteratively as you go, getting the framing done. So you're not having to worry about like the syntax and all these minutia of things. You're focused on the broader thing and the more valuable work. But it's been really interesting digging in that with our engineers and architects.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
so I appreciate you being on the podcast. So I want to point folks to Tough Day. Where should they go? And you mentioned a survey as well. Is that something that's still running that people can go
Yeah,
take? Like where should we point people and how can they find
just
you?
yeah, tough.day, tough like TOUGH.day. And you'll find the survey. I'm assuming by the time this airs, it'll still be available for people to continue to share their point of view. And it will have more and more available on that. If you're interested in user testing, we're always looking for user testers as well. And there's a spot on the site where you can sign up for that.
Nice. We got to get Hatchworks using it as an early user there. But thank you, KVJ. This has been one of my favorite like nuanced discussions. So much great meat to it. This is one that I'll go back and listen to
Oh,
again. But
thank
thanks for
you.
being on.
Thanks so much.